Before we get started, hey there, I'm Jason Linett, and maybe you've heard me say this before. The more we're all successful, the more we're all successful. And the one thing that will grow our hypnosis profession better than anything else is to have more of you out there helping your own clients and thriving in your own hypnosis businesses. That's why I'm inviting you to join our private community, exclusively for listeners of the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast. We have several thousand members in the group, and this is where recent guests of the program share additional resources related to their episode. It's a positive community with hypnotic professionals from all around the world. So it's a great place to get your questions answered. And as a benefit, as soon as you join, I'm going to share with you the best of the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast archives. And listen to this. It's absolutely free to join. Go to this website, group.worksmarthypnosis.com. Go there right now, answer a few quick questions, and I'll personally be there to welcome you into this helpful community. Be sure to join today. That website is group.worksmarthypnosis.com.
Most people, when they're in their problem, they're only seeing it from one perspective, right? They've only seen it from one side of things. So the moment you give them a different angle to look from, then you immediately open up different possibilities, different ways of thinking. And all of the processes within hypnosis, within NLP, whatever modality you use, they all aim to create the same thing, right?
Hypnosis helps people take back control of their lives. But here's the thing. Too many hypnotists struggle to get consistent results with their clients or grow their hypnosis businesses. I'm Jason Linett, and after more than 2 decades of building a thriving hypnosis practice, I created this podcast to help you do the same. Whether you're just starting your hypnosis journey or if you're ready to scale your business to the next level, you're exactly where you need to be. Welcome to Work Smart Hypnosis. One of the biggest questions that often pops up for someone who is either just getting started in hypnosis or perhaps already working as a hypnotist would be a simple question. Do I need to have all of my stuff sorted out? And here's some examples of that. Here's the person who perhaps would like to lose weight and they want to help clients lose weight, but now they're in their head going, well, who am I to do this? Because, well, that's what I see in the mirror. Or perhaps here's the person who, as a hypnotist, can absolutely help others with confidence. And yet, well, let's just put it this way. We all have those moments where some part of our old story stands in the way. And that's where I'm so excited for you all to listen to this conversation with Amy Cinnamon. She's a hypnotist from over in the UK, and a big part of this conversation is that of, yes, trusting yourself, trusting in the process, but also doing the work yourself. And you're going to hear a relatively personal story about a moment where she recognized that here she was helping clients and life happens. A moment occurred. And then she saw that as the means to then go out and work with a hypnotist, get help herself, and then move life forward. Plus, a really cool story about how, in some way, her first client might have been or might not have been James Bond, which is definitely worth a listen. And I don't know if you heard some snickering or giggles in the background because, hey, Amy, are you there?
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
here.
yeah, we're doing this one kind of interesting because the conversation you're all about to hear is actually from an event I ran back in December 2024. And they're all about to hear a bigger introduction. But Amy, since you're here right now, tell the audience a bit more about who you are and the work that you do.
Well, like you said, I'm a hypnotist here in the UK, and increasing my confidence over the years has been a big part of my process. And I feel like now I'm in this place where I am way more flexible in my work, and things are just happening in terms of getting those results for clients in a much easier way now because of, the changes that I've made myself, which everybody's going to hear about in the podcast.
Yeah. And then this becomes an interesting moment where we can kind of go in reverse order here because I'll put it this way. You and I first met a number of years ago. Then here's the event where I invited you to be a speaker at in December 2024. And then as we've been around each other for various projects and the time, about a year and a half since then, uh, this is said politely. The person in front of me right now is different than the person who I even saw back in December, a year and a half ago. So, how would you kind of define what's different now?
Whoa, yeah, a lot. A lot. So, well, just changing the way that I do things in my business, through the projects that we've worked on, that in itself has made a huge change in how I present myself, how I talk about my business. And that, anything that we do in our business doesn't just kind of change you on the outset and those interactions that you have. It changes you on a much deeper personal level as well. So what's different now?
Well,
Everything.
I'll put it through the context of something that I noticed, and it's part of the story as to why I wanted to resurface this conversation and then also have you back on and part of this introduction, which is that as Amy mentioned projects, you went through a collaborative journey with us in terms of relaunching your website and then putting out some new funnels along the way. And if anyone's curious about that, check out hypnosiswebsite.com. We actually got it. It was available. But then since then, here's what I've seen you've been doing on social media. And Amy, I haven't said this until now that we're recording and people are listening. I've been in my head going, "Oh, wow, here's what she's up to," and then also going, "Oh, she's putting out more stuff than I am right now. Oh, dear." Which that's a huge shift. That's a huge jump forward for you. So what's kind of the
Yeah.
motivator? What's kind of the internal shift for that?
Wow. I mean, that is an achievement if I'm putting out more stuff than you are. Um, wow, you know what? I've never really actually thought about it, except from the fact that I've learned how to do it better from the work that we've done. I've learned, or I'm still learning, I will say, just to do stuff even though it's not perfect, even though it might not be right, and taking a huge leap in that aspect of because before I would put stuff out that probably wasn't perfect, but I might have spent a lot of time behind the scenes getting it to that point where now I can just put out stuff so fast, so easily, and I don't care if it's wrong or right, as long as my intent and part of the messaging is there, it's then something to work on, which that's really the approach as to where I can get why there's so much stuff there. Um, and because I'm getting feedback from that, from clients, because I'm getting feedback, there's interactions with that. And it is turning people into clients as well, then that is encouraging me to do it more. So as that has become more of a focus for my business, absolutely. Putting more stuff out, building more content. Um, as you said earlier today, creating that huge back end. I remember hearing you say that for the first time years ago and thinking,
I just want
yeah,
everybody
that
to have a massive back end. That's really what I'm here for.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and so it's that that's always stayed with me as well. I can't really remember your question now. So
You answered it beautifully, and they're gonna
okay.
hear this later on in the dialogue, but let's do it again now. How can people find what you've been up to on social media, and how else can they track you down online?
So really easy. It's just my name, Amy Cinnamon. So it's cinnamon like the spice, but with a D on the end. And it's just Amy Cinnamon Hypnosis, whether that's you go into my website or whether you want to find me online, whichever platform, it's all the same. Amy Cinnamon Hypnosis.
Beautiful. And this is session number 457. So we just make this shortcut easy for everybody. The show notes, the resources we mention, the references, and we're going to also take the video of this conversation you're all about to listen to and actually make that video available so you can watch it over at worksmarthypnosis.com/457. That brings you directly over to all the resources connected to this episode. Amy, I'm excited for people to listen to this, and, can you do the thing so I don't have to on this one?
Of course, yes. So this is the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast session 457, Amy Cinnamon on trusting the process.
I was sharing the insight that a running gag of mine with some friends is that the worst way a presentation can begin is it okay if I Has your hypnosis client ever said this to you? "I felt relaxed, but I don't know if I was hypnotized." If you've heard that before, it means that one of the most critical elements was missing from your hypnosis session. You might have done every hypnosis technique and every hypnotherapy method correctly, but you've accidentally sabotaged your chances of your client getting their desired result. Here's the good news. It's an easy problem to fix. Check out this website, power.worksmarthypnosis.com. This is where you can get instant access to my Hypnotic Phenomenon Power Pack featuring the Hypnotize with Conviction program. It's a foolproof system to reliably create magical moments of hypnotic phenomenon with all of your clients, whether you see them in person or even online. What this does for you is help to build greater conviction that the desired change is already in motion. And even better, it means that your client will be able to actually feel the change taking place. How cool is that? It's these types of magical moments that helped my clients to become the people who sent me referrals and left me 5-star reviews. And I'm inviting you to grab this low-cost method that you can learn today and put to use with your next client. So go to power.worksmarthypnosis.com. Get vulnerable with you all for a few moments, which is the international cue for they're not. And get ready for some extremely bad acting, but I think you may have one-upped that. What was your version of that you saw someone do?
Well, so I was at a workshop, and the workshop was for young people, and the presenter started off with, "I'm going to make you all cry." And I was like, very quickly just hit record on my phone because I thought, I'm definitely going to report you.
And the real kicker is, did he?
Well, all of the kids are just like, no chance. No, you're not. They all just were so stern-faced the whole way through. Like, he triggered no emotion.
I'm so excited for Amy to be joining us here, just with time zones and all of that. We're doing this as a pre-record. She's about to get vulnerable, and everybody here is going to cry. So, Amy, the stage is yours. No. For those that don't know you, could you introduce yourself and give a bit of your story and who you are?
Yeah, sure. So, well, my name is Amy Cinnamon. I'm a hypnotherapist and a personal development coach. And I help people to reduce stress, to reduce anxiety, so that they can reach their personal goals and make those changes that they want to have happen in their life. And, well, my very first hypnosis client, which I wanted to tell you about, was James Bond. He was my first hypnosis client. And I had just came off the call. He'd booked his appointment. He'd paid me in full. And I'm just like jumping around doing this whole happy dance thing. And I've just booked my first hypnosis client. And then my husband said to me, "Are you all right? What's the matter with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" He said, "Because you've got a rash all around your neck, like you've come out in all these botches." And I thought, oh God, right, I feel a bit sick. I need to sit down for a moment. So I sat myself down. And then all of a sudden I just started thinking all of these thoughts of, what have you done? Like, just cancel this session with this guy, tell him that you've made a mistake, um, tell him that, just referring to somebody else, Amy, who do you think you are? You can't do this with him. Like, just tell me your cat's died. That moment, it's like when you're, oh, shit, like, how am I going to come up with the goods here? I'm not going to be able to deliver. And that was because after I'd done my first hypnosis training, I didn't put it into practice at all. Not one bit. I'd continue to learn about it. I'd continue to find out more about it and do more courses and read more books, but I hadn't actually done the thing yet. I didn't feel like I was an expert, and that was the problem there for me. I didn't feel like I was good enough. And this guy, okay, he wasn't really James Bond. He was, but he was a Royal Navy commander. He had the same job as James Bond. And he wanted to improve his own public speaking. He had this huge event coming up and he wanted to speak to all of these people. And I was like, who do I think I am? Like, how can I help this guy out when I haven't even gotten over my own stuff? You know? I know I'm going like way into my story. Like, how much of this do you want? Like, all of it.
This is fantastic. Well, it's that kind of experience where, here's where we dive
Because I could just
into
talk on forever.
learning. On one side of things, just between you and I and maybe 18 other people. I see what you did there. But at the same time, I knew it. It's a storytelling structure. But at the same time, I mean, that's really where so many people are, where here's this learning, and then here's this. Well, I'll tell a quick aside here, which is that one of the ways that I found to immediately boost the confidence in the booking process with a client, and this is not meant to be a do this because it works, though everybody do this because it works. It's where if you can demonstrate a level of thinking about the issue differently than how they've been thinking about it up until now, it immediately puts you into some kind of an expert position. They attach that confidence to you and they go, this is the person. So, easy example is the one that you just brought up of public speaking. And it's where they would say, I have issues with public speaking. And I would ask the question, well, there's three different places where the fear can pop up. One is the whole anticipatory side of things leading up to it. But then for some people, once they start presenting, then they're fine. And then there's other people that the anxiety and the fear happens during the actual presentation. But then there's this other group of people, which, side note, I used to be in this extremely weird category, which was I was fine before. I was completely fine during. Give me an audience. Woohoo. Yet spike of adrenaline, anxiety, and everything afterwards, almost to the point that I'd pass
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
And you know your situation better than I do. Where is this feeling that we need to address? And suddenly now they're thinking about the issue in a different way. Yet your story is one that suddenly it's the okay, I got the client.
Yeah. So
Shit, now what?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly that. And then the whole panic set in. So I'd always had an issue with public speaking, like through my entire life. So everything that you described of what, your client might go through, I had all of that and more. Like I was triple whammied with everything. And so I'm thinking, who on earth do I think I am if I'm going to be helping other people and I haven't sorted my own stuff out? Like this needs to happen. So that moment when you just start searching everywhere and anywhere, like the entire universe to try and find somebody who's already done what you want to do, is already doing what you want to do. And that's actually when first came across your podcast, your Work Smart Hypnosis podcast. And over 2 weeks, I crammed in as many as I could because I had like 2 weeks before I was meeting with James Bond. And I crammed as many as I could in. And it really changed a lot of the things that I'd been telling myself about hypnosis. I'd actually had an ex-mentor of mine who told me that hypnosis was dangerous. And for a moment, I almost gave up on it completely. And so, finding your work really came at the right time for me. And then also with the money that this guy had paid me, I then paid for sessions with a hypnotherapist. Pretty much the whole amount that I'd been paid, I then paid to somebody else to work on my own stuff, to overcome my own fears, to overcome my own barriers, specifically around public speaking and other stuff that I just thought I need to challenge myself. Like, if I want to challenge people on dealing with their stuff, then I need to go there first.
Yeah, which
And
I want to come to that here in a moment, that you did something beautiful, and just so everybody's clear, as I was making these invites, I sent everybody a simple form to go, hey, when I ask what is it that needs to happen for people in this industry to have greater confidence, what would be that thing? And your response, let's go ahead and say it now, was my favorite, because also you gave it to me in a framework, which frameworks equals
did I?
freedom. Yeah. As in, oh, step one is this, step two is this, step three is that. I'm like, cool. We have a step by step, paint by the numbers. Before we dive into that, this story that you're telling clearly is part of the origin story, part of the backstory. Can you kind of talk through just the nature of the business that you're now running, the types of clients that you tend to work with? So we're clear that's the before, but give us a bit of the after so that will set the stage for power of what we're about to get into here.
Yeah. So, well, oh, right now, well, pretty much
Hype
since
yourself up,
that.
Amy. That's what I'm asking for.
So since that guy, I totally love hypnosis now. And pretty much ever since that session, I was like, right, this is it now. I've got to practice. This is it. There's no going back. It was almost like I'd stepped into this new world. And then, so many things just open up and become so much clearer. I couldn't go back to the old way that I was doing things, because I was actually working with clients before, but not doing hypnosis. I was using NLP, more of like a coaching style thing. But this guy was specific, like he wanted hypnosis. So I was like, oh shit, okay, let's do it. He kind of forced me in a good way. And he's still a client to this day. I get loads of referrals from him. He's in the Navy, he's a military guy, so I do get a lot of military clients, which is generally my client base. So I see a lot of ex-army as well, and it's always around the same thing. The specifics are always different, but generally it's stress, generally it's anxiety, it's things that they want to have happen, but they can't because this thing that's stopping them. And, they're just stuck in that zone where I was before as well.
Now,
I
question
also,
off of that real quick, though. Do you
yeah,
have the same military background that your clientele has?
um, I was actually in the army, but for a very short time. I used to teach outdoor sports. No, no, wrong way around. I went in the army first and then left and then taught outdoor sports for quite a while. Um, so I did have an initial plan to have a career in the army, but once I was in there, I really enjoyed it, by the way. It was fantastic and loved every minute of it. But I wanted a cat. I just wanted to come home and I just wanted to have a cat. Which I know that's so random. And I never thought I would ever, want a cat in my life. I hadn't thought about it, but I just wanted to have a place to live and have a cat. But then so when I left, that still didn't happen because then I did outdoor sports and moved away from out of my area, lived out of the bag for like another 2 to 3 years before finally actually getting a cat.
The
Um,
reason why I asked the question, though, is that so many people run that story of, but I don't have the experience that my clients have had. I've not
oh,
gone
yes.
through what
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
gone through. But let's do this. Let's dive into these three steps that you shared. And then we'll come back to that, which I've got a feeling we're not going to have to, which I'll prompt you
All
here
right.
that you had said phase one of this is about keeping the focus on your client and not yourself. It's not about you, it's about them. And
Yes.
talk to us about what that does for the whole am I good enough internal dialogue.
All right. So, well, when I first started doing hypnosis, I was actually ahead of year in a secondary school. And on one of the days, I was asked to cover a lesson, right? I was asked to cover a maths lesson. Now, it's important to realize that I am terrible at maths, all right? Especially top set year 11 maths. Like year 5, year 6 primary, I'm all over that. But
Just for
year
everybody
11,
clarifying, this is not the Math Confidence Worldwide Summit. This is Hypnotic Confidence.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's completely okay in this environment to say,
You're allowed to say you're not
Amy,
good
you
enough at
suck at
this.
math, but go on. Yeah, you were
Yeah,
sharing.
I do totally suck at math. There's no denying it, but I haven't practiced it. So, what do you expect, right?
Yeah.
And I was asked to cover the
These
lesson,
things
and
do
I
it
was
better. We don't need it.
yeah, that's like every kid's argument in school, by the way. So I was kind of like, all right, yep, I'll just do it because we just need a member of staff in there. That's all it was about, really. It's about the kids. It's not about me, and I'll just figure it out on the day. So then when I arrived at the lesson, I got all of the kids in, everybody sat down, they're all waiting patiently for me to start the lesson. And I'm rummaging around on the teacher's desk thinking, where's the work? Like there must be a test paper or something that they've left so they can just get on with the lesson, like I don't have to do anything. And obviously just my luck, there was nothing left. So all I could do was get the kids to tell me what they'd been working on, bring someone up, show me on the board, write the problem out. Right, you guys all solve that together. And that's kind of how the lesson went. And they're coming up and taking turns. And whilst this is happening, whilst this is going on, I'm just creating the opportunity. I'm just, being the guide, if you like. Not at any point did those students know that I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. It was in that moment I realized that, oh, I don't need to be the expert here. Like, I'm just creating the opportunity because it's the same in your sessions. You're just creating the opportunity for your client to see things from a different perspective, right? And so that realization is what really kind of gave me that momentum to keep practicing, to keep using hypnosis and still does today. Like it keeps me out of that whole mindset of what if I'm not good enough? What if it doesn't work? Like what if their problem is too big, and I don't know how to deal with it.
And
Because
that
your
perfectly
client,
sets us up for the second step of it, then, which is one, it's about them, it's about their
yeah,
specific journey.
exactly.
And
It's
I,
about them,
I
not
give a
you.
quick little aside to that, too, which is I'm the person who putt putt golf, where it's like just the smaller
Hmm.
course. If I ever do that with my kids, I'm the one who's going, do we have to keep score? Because they're going to kick my ass. Not my skill, not my skill. And yet,
Yeah,
here's where I've worked with professional golfers, and it's where the dialogue would be I'm not the person to give you strategies on how to better swing the club. If that was actually what you needed, you wouldn't have to be here. Instead, you're standing over the ball. What's the thought that's going through your mind? What's the feeling that's in your body? So, my phrase on this is that there only needs to be one expert in the room, and that goes both directions. They're an expert in terms of their current situation and how they want that
exactly.
to be different. And
Mm.
this perfectly sets us up for your second point about trusting in the process, where you're
Mm.
then the expert on at least the methods, the strategies, the principles of the actual work. So, can you elaborate on that in terms of, again, trusting in your process and knowing the process itself is key?
Y- Yeah, exactly. And I think having that reframe, if you like, of you don't need to be the expert because your client already is. As long as you have some idea of what you're doing, obviously, as long as you are aware of how to set up that new pathway for them so that they can go and explore it at their own pace and in their own way. um then it for me that's really the job done, because most people, when they're in their problem, they're only seeing it from one perspective, right? They've only seen it from one side of things. So the moment you give them um a different angle to look from, then you immediately open up different possibilities, different ways of thinking. And all of the processes within hypnosis, within NLP, whatever modality you use, they all aim to create the same thing, right? So yeah,
More options, more strategies,
yeah,
a
more
different
options, more
perspective. Yeah.
strategies. Yeah.
Well, it's that shift in perspective of that, which I love that because it helps to amplify the whole message of when you know the technique, when you know how the technique works, but also you're clear why it works.
Yeah.
Then it's where we don't need to have the designated outcome at the end of this already perfectly laid out. I'm trying to remember if it was one of the events that you were at that I was training where I kept having to go. There was someone in the group that I kept having to go, stop doing hypnosis, which was, they kept giving the suggestion of just, and now you're feeling even more confident. Now you can feel that confidence in your
Yeah,
body.
yeah,
And just
yeah,
the power of simply opening up space and going, and as you focus on that confidence, what do you notice now? And
yeah,
letting their read of it come through.
yeah, exactly. And I think, in the early days, it would be a case of, right, this guy wants to be more confident, so how can I make him more confident? But that way of thinking just created a barrier, because obviously, no matter how much of an expert you are, you have no idea how to make somebody else confident. They know. You just have to find a way to work with them and for them to find that themselves. Makes sense.
It does. Though, if someone can make them confident, Amy, it's you. Um,
Oh, yeah,
although,
I'll give it a good go.
although here's where perfectly set us up at the beginning of this. Your third point here. Hey, everybody, is it okay if we get a little vulnerable here? No, is the third one you said was deal with your own stuff. And it's where, you shared that you went off and you worked with somebody. I've very openly shared times where I've gone off and worked on things myself. So, like, I'd ask you a question first before we get into this. What would you guess or assume, whether right or incorrect here, right or wrong? Um, what would you assume is often that story of the person who maybe does have some things that need to be addressed and this fear? Well, just let's simplify it. What's often that internal story that holds someone back from reaching out and getting that help in the first place?
Well, all right.
Global,
So
not just us, not just the client. I mean, just people in general.
yeah,
What's
yeah.
Amy's version of this?
So, well, I'll tell you what, right? When I actually went for my own sessions, I had a friend say to me, um, have I already said this out loud? I feel like I've said this out loud. I had a friend who said to me, "Aren't you a little bit embarrassed that you're going to see a hypnotherapist when you're already trained up in this stuff?" And I was like, um, no, because, right, it's like when you go to the gym, you know how to use the equipment and you know how to train yourself, right? And you will slowly get there bit by bit. If you persevere, you will eventually get there. However, when you work with a coach, you're going to get there much faster. You're going to be 10 times stronger, 10 times fitter than you ever would be had you done the training yourself. So no, there's no embarrassment, there's no shame. And I think, just society in general, there is definitely a past culture of shame, when we try to improve ourselves, when we make ourselves different. But also on the back of that, people think there's mental health issues involved as well. So that is there's huge stigma around that. So that prevents a lot of people from making changes or seeing a therapist or a coach. But yeah, it's just like going to the gym and working with a personal trainer or going to a gym class. We all know how to do these things, but we need the professionals, right?
I'm deciding whether or not I censor myself, or I think I now have to tell the story with all the labels in there in the way that I shouldn't tell
Just
it.
do it.
Okay, yeah. So now officially, my ex father-in-law, which in
Hmm.
the adventures of divorce, the fact that I lost that relationship, oh rats. Yet it's an illustration of this here. It's a moment where it's Thanksgiving dinner, and I hear the question of, "There's really enough crazy people out there to keep you in business?" And just without any sort of negative tone, I go, "Well, actually, the way that I look at it, the people who are reaching out for help, they're some of the wisest, strongest, and most empowered people I've ever engaged with. Not because they're paying me and helping to feed your grandkids, but because these are the people who have looked around and went, something's not going the way that I want it to right now. And if something's going to change, my take on this, in some way, the ownership of needing to make a change is also an ownership of going, I probably had something to do with how I got into this situation. And that
Hmm.
means
Hmm.
I can now also change it as well. And because of that, these are the strongest people. So I'd be more concerned about the ones who look around and external blame everything else in the world and say it's not their fault. I think those are the crazy ones.
I
Pass the
couldn't
sweet
agree
potatoes.
more.
Um, there were some
Yeah.
there were some embedded dialogues and commands in there that were meant to other
Mm.
family members that were there present at the time. No, but it's that awareness that it is a position of strength. So I mean, I'd ask you the question without even getting into all the specifics. From doing that kind of work yourself, here's
Mhm.
the obviously politely generalized version of the question. What is it that now, just as a practitioner, you're able to do better because you took the time to do the work yourself?
Oh gosh, I would like the
It's
whole
such a good
shebang.
question. I wish I thought of that before we
Yeah.
started. I know, right? I'm just
Just
vamping to give you some time to think on it.
yeah, I mean, the easy answer to that is just pretty much everything because that was my biggest barrier, and it's going back to that whole idea of how can I help someone else if I know that you can be one step ahead of your client, and I'd get that, and I know that you can have a technique and use a technique to teach somebody and help them get through it. But I also think that you have to have something else behind that because you can't just rely on a technique because the techniques are there just as a framework, as a guide. Really, it's about that technique being morphed and shaped into a way that is going to better suit the client. And I think because of my own personal experience of going through in such depth of my own stuff, but then also applying that into my sessions, I think it's just given me more freedom to play around, to do things differently, to be more creative rather than, sticking with a strict script or um, sticking to a specific technique. I think what I'm trying to say is that there's not just one technique that's going to work. Sometimes it might be multiple, or, sometimes it might just be one. I mean, I literally just taught one technique to a 10-year-old girl the other week who has used it for the entire time in school and has had a brilliant week. And then there's other people where just one technique wouldn't be enough. Like there's too many different things going on for them. Like you said at the start about with people with public speaking issues, there's so many things going on. Sometimes it can be one thing or, two things, and then sometimes there's just so many layers. And if you take off one of those layers in a session and then somebody erupts with something else, that they didn't even know was there, then you can't be in a position where you then become fearful of, oh my God, how am I going to deal with this? Like, you've got to be able to be in a position where you can be challenged as a practitioner and still hold your own. And if I hadn't have gone through I'd done my training, right? I'd done my NLP training. I'd gone through all of the techniques of my training. You kind of partner up when you do it, don't you? The same in hypnosis, but it's not the same. It is not the same as actually going in and fully going into your own therapeutic process. And it did really take my thinking about how I approach sessions, how I approach things with clients to a whole new level. And I would, well, it wasn't that long ago, actually. I worked with a hypnotherapist again, a different one, on a different issue. And I will see myself in the future doing the same again, because it just allows you to get through your own stuff much quicker. As I said, like, why would you hold on to a barrier? Why would you let something stop you from moving forward that can just be resolved in a session or, short program or whatever?
It's the
I know
classic.
I'm
You can
waffling on
either
that, but yeah.
it's the classic, you can either have the results you're going for or the reasons why you don't yet have the results.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the
You said
results
that
are
much simpler.
more fun. Hey there, it's Jason. And in this afterthought moment together, I want to kind of rewind the story back and bring you to a story that I think I might have told on this podcast at some point, but I don't remember. It's where at one point there was a family gathering, and here's someone who didn't know that I had yet transitioned and started to work full time as a hypnotist. And the exact question was, wow, there's really enough people in the world who are crazy enough to keep you in business? And I didn't mean the response that I gave this person to be a jab. It definitely came across as one. And in retrospect, I'm glad it was because it might have been the thing they needed to hear, which is that I responded, I go, well, no, not at all. The fact is, there are people that as we go through life, we all run into a situation where something isn't going the way we would like. We're not feeling at our best. And the way that I see it is the people who reach out for help, the people who eventually hire me, they're some of the smartest, strongest, and wisest people I have ever met. And I say that not just because they're paying me and helping me, feed my kids. It's the fact that there's so many people who kind of put themselves into the scenario, the self-imposed story, that they are the victim of their environment. That because of this, that's why I've got this issue. And, all of us can have those moments, but then the journey out of it usually is also that of kind of waking up and no longer being in that situation there. So I say this here because I've had those moments myself of reaching out and getting support. And same is true for, a personal issue, an emotional issue, a psychological issue, even a business issue. It's a position of strength to go, here's someone else who can help me on this journey. And in one part, it's a segment as to why I wanted to have Amy's conversation now reach a larger audience and also feature her story now in terms of where she's gone. And it's this element that is this deeper part of what happens as we guide someone through a journey. She mentioned that we'd collaborated on her website, and this is what we do with the service, and the details are over at the website, which, of course, gods of the internet opened up. And yes, I was able to buy hypnosiswebsite.com. But it's where, that's the deliverable of here's the website, here's the confidence that you're going to be able to actually manage and grow it and update it yourself by the time we then hand over the reins. But really, in the journey of it, It's about helping you to find your voice. It's about helping you to stand out in a crowded marketplace. And it's about you, well, I'll say it this way, giving yourself permission to be that person who is there as that beacon of light, as that guide for others to then move things forward. And going back to this one thing that Amy and I talked about in the conversation you just heard, the element of focusing on the client, focusing on the audience, not just on yourself. The greatest impact that I've had, the greatest results that I've ever seen have been those moments where the metaphorical riddle is always you've got two ears and one mouth, and your communication ought to be proportionate. What happens differently when you truly listen to your audience? You're aware of what are their thoughts, their feelings, their concerns, their problems, the things that are keeping them up at 2 in the morning. And then now we get the clarity of what content we need to create and not just what we do and how we do it, but also the element of who we are and how we show up and how even that is a major part of the change process. Thank you for listening to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast with Jason Linett. The more we're all successful, the more we're all successful. I've made that statement for years. It's why I do this show. And here is one thing that you can do today to help do your part. Go to worksmarthypnosis.com/podcast. Go there and make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you'd leave a review. Your feedback helps other hypnosis professionals find the show. Subscribe and share your thoughts today at worksmarthypnosis.com/podcast.